Welcome back to Season 4 of the Sober Motivation Podcast. Join me, Brad, each week as my guests and I share incredible and powerful sobriety stories. We're here to show sobriety is possible, one story at a time. Let's go. In this episode of the podcast, Hillary shares her deeply personal story of growing up in a chaotic household and transitioning into a life filled with alcohol and drugs from high school onwards. She details the impact of her heavy drinking, including a DUI at 19, and the evolution of her drinking from a social activity to an isolated one. Her turning point comes after reading a relatable sober story and attending a meeting. Though she relapses after 4 months of initial sobriety, ultimately a tough experience in Mexico leads her to recommit to sobriety. Now with over 3 years, Hillary reflects on the authentic joy and happiness she's found without alcohol, reshaping her identity and recovering out loud. And this is Hillary's story on the Sober Motivation Podcast. Glad to have you for another show. Before we jump into it, I want to mention if you're looking for some community, some connection, some support, join the Sober Motivation community for a month free. Get a whole Sober July under your belt. Come and connect with the community, hear other people's stories, get involved with the meetings, make some new connections. It's incredible the people that plug in, the progress that they make is beautiful. A lot of people started there on their first day, and some of them have over 300 days, 400 days. And it's incredible just to see the growth that people experience when they quit drinking, start putting forward some effort on their recovery, on their life, on healing things, improving their relationships. So if you have any interest, I'll drop that link down in the show notes below. Join us for July, completely free. Also, if you love the podcast and you're enjoying it, you want to support, make a little donation, check out buymeacoffee.com/sobermotivation. Everything is appreciated. It helps cover the cost of hosting the podcast, the different softwares, the equipment, everything else. So much appreciated. Hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I did, and I'll be back with you at the end. Welcome back to another episode of the Sober Motivation Podcast. We've got Hillary with us today. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm great. Glad to connect here. Happy to have you on the podcast and share your story with all of us.
Thank you.
So what was it like for you growing up?
Growing up for me was, like, in the less words possible, chaos. So I'm one of 6, but not all of my siblings are biological. Only one of the litter is full blood. But growing up was like 2 older siblings. So I have an older sister, 10 years older, and a brother, 7 years older. And then me, the middle child, and then our little baby. And then the extra 2 came later. But our house was very loud. Like, there was people coming and going often. My parents did not like each other at all. There was lots of yelling in the household. And so it was like me and my siblings kind of like leaning on each other a lot until finally my parents divorced. And that was, for some kids, would have been like a sad moment. But in our family dynamic, it was almost kind of like a light moment. But there was always like, I was always kind of labeled as the problem kid or the loud kid, or always being extra performative for attention. So when I was 11 and my mom moved outside of the city in the elementary school that I went to, it like changed my whole dynamic, and I had to make friends again at like 13 years old, which, like, for a teenage girl, like, that's a pretty pivotal time. And yeah, it was a lot of kind of, my mom had to work full time. And so it was me and my sister kind of doing it ourselves, because my older siblings had moved out at that point. And so I think I kind of like grew up pretty quickly just because of like the chaos that was in our household. And, you know, having so many siblings, like, we always had this joke that if you weren't loud, you weren't heard. So that was kind of like a thing. But yeah, I always really leaned on my siblings in a lot of ways. And then when I got into high school was when I started drinking, essentially, because that was one of the ways I found out how to make friends. And my sister and I were kind of left alone a lot. So we kind of got to do whatever we wanted. So yeah, that's kind of, I think I was like 16 when I started drinking, just kind of out with my friends, unsupervised. And I remember the reason why I first started drinking was because like I wanted someone to think I was cool or to be accepted. Like that was like in hindsight looking back was like, oh, someone wanted me to come and hang out with them, and but they were all drinking these beers. I don't like, this is like old school. It was like the old English
Yeah.
tall gross beers, and I think I was like in the
Yeah.
basement of some high school kid's parents' house, and we were
Yeah.
just drinking these old English.
Yeah.
And it tasted so disgusting that you would think that like a young 16-year-old girl would just be like, oh, this is gross, I'm not drinking this.
Mm.
But it was almost like I just wanted so badly to be wanted in that
Mm.
moment that I was like, oh yeah. And that night I ended up, I think, like peeing myself, and like they
Mm.
took me home, and my mom wasn't home, so it was all fine. But then it was just a lot of that, like sneaking out, getting in trouble. My mom found
Yeah.
finding out, getting grounded. I started
Yeah.
drinking at school and getting suspended. And it was just like this pendulum of highs and lows all through high school. And to the point that my mom even said, you know, there's two Hillarys I really like. One is this like amazing, intelligent, smart, bubbly girl. And there's this other side that is like just this little devil child. And that's kind of like always really
Wow.
stuck home with me because I know that I was such a reckless teenager. Like my principal called my mom one time
Yeah.
because I stole her car when she was out of town and went joyriding through the school parking lot. Like when I say chaos in my childhood, like there was no shortage of chaos. I was doing anything to like get attention essentially at that
Yeah.
point. And
Yeah.
alcohol helped me with that too.
Yeah, well, yeah, for sure. I mean, thanks for sharing all that too, by the way. And I think when you go back to that spot about, fitting in and alcohol, I mean, it checks that box completely at our, when we were younger, right? I always struggled too with fitting in, and I had a big transition too. I lived in Texas for a bit, and then we moved to North Carolina, and too, it was like starting all over. Everybody's kind of grown up, or a lot of the kids have grown up together. Now you're trying to like fit into this whole thing. And so if I was all for putting aside what I knew was right and wrong, just to have a place to fit in and make friends. So and then for high school for you, that was kind of the thing. And it works. It really
Yeah.
does work. And then I look back at my life now. Of course, there were other things I could have done, but they might have been a heavier lift. I mean, the
Mhm.
alcohol to get in and get acceptance and fit into the crowd was a really easy lift to do and to repeat the process to show up at a party and oh man, so cool to have you here, right? I felt like I was, man, this is great. Like everybody's really interested. I look back now at it and I'm like, I don't know the realness or the authenticity of it all, but at the time it was great. I loved it. So
Yeah.
you're having all this stuff in high school, I mean, which was I say sometimes the hardest 4 years of my life, with all of the trouble and everything that I was getting into and just the mayhem and the chaos. I was thinking too. I have three little kids now, and I was telling my wife, I said, "Look, if either of these kids are even a quarter of how I was, like we are in big trouble, really big trouble." Because I was constantly in trouble, skipping class. I lost interest in school. School was
Yeah.
more of like a social thing to go to, make friends, and figure out what we were going to do for the rest of the day. It was kind of our meeting point. My parents would go off to work, and then we would, wander and come up with all the excuses why I wasn't at school for the day. How do things look like for you after school too? Like after high school, did you have any
Oh yeah.
plans for what you were going to
Oh,
do? And oh, even before we go there, if you don't
yeah.
mind, did you ever think throughout high school this was a problem?
No,
Yeah.
never. Because there, in my group of friends that I was in as well, like we were out behind the school smoking cigarettes. Like I went to school in like the early 2000s as well. So this was kind of like, you know, the cool kids were smoking cigarettes and driving their parents' cars. And it was just kind
Mm.
of like, it was really cool to be a loser. Like I look at people like that now in a completely different way, but that was like we were kind of like slinging our backpacks, smoking
Yeah.
cigarettes and like drinking beers on the weekend. Like it was just kind of like so accepted, and because I found a way to like get people around me by being kind of like that person that was like, yeah, come with me. Like, my mom's not home, come over for beers and just that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it wasn't until like way, way, way after high
Yeah.
school that it like wasn't serving me anymore. Cause I did
Yeah.
a year and a half of university, but I had
Yeah.
also turned 19, which is drinking age in Canada or in BC where I was living at the time.
Yeah.
So that's when the club scene started. So I wasn't going to class, or if I was hungover out of my mind.
Mm.
And I eventually dropped out, but I wanted to be a lawyer, which is like the funniest thing. So
Yeah.
my life has taken a completely different path than I had ever expected it to. But that was like, I took a first year of criminology and I was taking psychology. And so there was like a part of me that really wanted like an awesome life for myself, but I just kept getting sucked into the party, the people, and the drinking as well. Like, it was so fun for me because I was so good at it. Like,
Yeah.
I could take more shots than anyone else. I was lining them up, and I started working in bars as well. So it just, I orchestrated everything in my life around me to make my drinking possible. Like, working at a bar, perfect. I can drink at work. I can be
Mm.
hungover because my shifts don't start late. Like, all of the things that you would think a person would be like, oh, that's, getting out of hand. I made it fully acceptable in my life because that was the way I figured out how to have people around me and to be wanted.
Yeah.
Um, and it was eventually the party scene that introduced me to drugs. And that's when things kind of started to go a little haywire.
Yeah. Get a little bit more wobbly. It's interesting too, because kind of that theme you're on too about, the drinking and people around and maybe a sense of belonging or acceptance, all of those things that go into it. But as you're going through this, I mean, in your earlier years there, are you aware of that as to why everything's going on? Or is it just sort of like in the background of this is, in hindsight, reflecting back?
Looking back, I remember feeling so horrible being alone. Like, if I was home alone, it was one of the most uncomfortable feelings. So I would be like calling friends, like, where are we going? What are we doing? So I found out the easiest way is to go out to a bar. You can just sit at the bar and make 100 friends because there's a bunch of people sitting there.
Yeah.
And it was just being so uncomfortable in silence, so uncomfortable being alone that I had to get out of the house. I had to go out. I had to do something. I had to drink. I had to numb that.
Yeah. Find a distraction in a sense,
Yeah.
right? With people or with drinking. So you get wrapped up in sort of the bar scene too. A lot of people share this. I don't know if you're going to relate or not, but when you get into the restaurant and sort of the service-based stuff, there's a lot of other people where things look a lot the same.
Yeah.
And when you're hanging out with a lot of other people where a lot of things look the same, then it just feels like this is normal and everybody's doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you relate to that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Other
totally.
people.
It's
Yeah.
like almost like it's easy to say now looking back, but it's almost like I controlled all of it. I made that possible because had I not been in that scene surrounded by those people,
Yeah.
it would have been a completely different story. But like anyone who wasn't into what I wanted, they weren't going to be cool. They weren't friend people I wanted to hang out with. I
Yeah.
purposefully went and sought out certain groups and situations because I knew that that was going to keep pulling me back. And like, alcoholics love to drink with other alcoholics. Addicts love to do drugs with other addicts. So I'm like, of course I'm going to be hanging out with those people because
Yeah.
they do more than me. So I'm not that bad.
Oh yeah, and that's another interesting dynamic to it too. Yeah. If you see that if other people, if John's like further down maybe or
Yeah.
further down the line with things, then it can keep us maybe in a place to where like, at least I'm not where John is. Like
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah. And I think that's a very relatable story for a lot of people. I feel like when I look back, maybe I kept one or two people like that close enough. And maybe that was for the reason. Keep them, not really close, but close enough to where I could see their life really unraveling. And it was kind of like a measuring stick, right? As long as I'm not there, like I'm good. And I think we can do a good job convincing ourselves, like, I'll never be there. I remember
Yeah.
drawing lines in the sand all the time. Yeah, of course I'll have fun and party a little bit, but I'll never do that. And then I do that. And
Yep.
then but I'll never do that. I mean, of course, that's a no way. And then every time I crossed over these lines, I found it much easier to walk
Yeah.
over the next one without even really thinking a whole heck of a lot about it.
Yeah. Well, like one of my biggest rules, kind of towards the end, this is when I started like trickling thoughts of wanting to stop. But I remember saying, like, oh, I would never do cocaine without alcohol.
Mm.
Like, I only would ever do it with if I was drunk and like needed it. And that just went right out the window. Like it got to the point where like I was doing lines before my first drink and I was using the alcohol to come down from the Coke. Like it did a flip flop where I had this hard rule. Like I would never, nope, I'm only ever going to do it if I'm too drunk. And it
Yeah.
just completely switched.
Yeah. And then things change up. Did anybody mention to you, like, after the university days or anything, has anybody approached you with like, hey, maybe this is a bit much, or like anything like that, or no?
Yes, but it was always a joke. Like, oh, call Hillary. She knows where the party is. Oh, get Hill to pick up booze, or oh, she's got the liquor. It was just one of those things where my dad was a really big drinker. So I think in our family, it was just kind of
Mm.
like drinking was accepted, sort of. And because for me, I was in my 20s and I was just in my party phase, all of the things that, we tell ourselves that no one actually like sat me down and was like, oh, Hill, you're having a problem. But it was very, very well known that I drank a lot and
Mm.
often like that.
Yeah.
And I was partying a lot. Like that was very well known in my family.
Yeah.
Um, and like, but for my dad's drinking, like he never hit anyone, never got fired from any job as a result of it. He never stayed in bed too late. So we never labeled him as an alcoholic. I would now. I've told him straight to his face. I'm like, hey, dad, you should quit drinking. But because of his drinking, it made mine so much more acceptable because my dad was like one of my drinking buddies. I remember being 19 and just cheersing and drinking with dad. And
Yeah.
it just wasn't uncommon for me to
Yeah.
be drinking as much as I was at that time.
Yeah. So just overall normalized.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
just the drinking in how things were. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people too, and I have people on the show from all different countries, right? And it's all the different cultures. Every culture has its own way about it, and it's really interesting to hear the different ways of how it's brought in right into the family history of other people, maybe struggling with drinking too, and just how normalized that aspect is to where as wild I think as it is when I look back at my life. Looking back at it now, I'm like, dude, how didn't you notice?
Yeah,
How didn't you know? I'm thinking like, man, how didn't you notice you were drinking? I drank a lot different, even from the beginning, than the people around me. And I always wondered, like, how are they? They must be harboring a secret. There's no way that that's all they drink, and they go home and they go back to school. And when everybody leaves, I'm rooting through, whatever's left just to have a little extra. I was like, everybody must go home and do this. The reality was, a lot of them didn't, and I knew I drank different, but I also knew that I also thought that this was normal because there were other people who did drink the way I drank, and I kept them pretty close too because I didn't want to be judged on having too much or falling over or blacking out or not remembering the night before, or, acting
yeah,
like this. So I think that like you kind of mentioned there too, we keep people around that are
yeah,
not going to make us feel bad. But when I look back too, I'm like, well, people who didn't do this would have never been interested in hanging out with me anyway because they were doing
totally.
they were doing other
Yeah.
things. They would have had no interest in sort of this stuff. I thought day drinking was like the coolest thing, and now when I look
Oh, it's
back,
the
now
best.
now once I'm sober, I'm like, what a waste of an entire day and probably the next. I was like, oh man, that was actually because you'd hit about 5, 6 o'clock and you had a choice to make. Like, I'm either going all in or I'm going to bed. And
Yeah.
like 84% of the time I went all in, and it wasn't a pretty ending.
Yeah, I
Um,
always got really jealous of the people that could day drink and stop at 5 and then like go home, have a nap, eat dinner at like 7, and then drink a bunch of water, go to bed, and like have the next day. Like, I never understood those people. I'm like,
yeah.
you just stop and go home, like the party just ends. Like, I just never understood that.
Yeah, same here. I never that or and it's all kind of looking back, we can see it, right? Hindsight's
Yeah.
2020. But at the time, I mean, as you go through it, it's that maybe denial or just we don't want to look at it. Or, I believe too that when I was in my 20s, this would be a phase. Of course I'm gonna finish school and of course I'm gonna do all these things. This is a little bit of phase and I'll quote unquote grow up eventually and it all just magically happened. That never happened. It didn't just
Yeah.
magically happen. So as you're kind of going through all this, how do you feel on the inside about how life is going? I mean, is there anything that's sort of standing out to you there, waking up with the hangovers and maybe the increased anxiety, if that was part of it or anything like that you notice?
Yeah, like my hangovers were so bad. And that was actually like one of the things that I've said in like AA meetings before is that
Mm,
I wasn't a bad drinker. I was really fun when I was drinking. People wanted to be around me when I was drinking. I was a good time Sally. I wasn't starting fights or anything like that.
mm,
But it was my hangovers that were atrocious because I would fall off the face of the planet. I would turn off my phone for days. Good luck finding me.
mm,
The depression just like full on depleted. I would call it hangxiety. And most of the time, I would actually just reach for the bottle because that's like my hangover cure. Um, and then once I got to the point where like I would be on day 3, I would finally have to like be to the point where I had to stop drinking because I just couldn't drink anymore.
mm.
And I would turn my phone off. People wouldn't know where I was. I would just sleep for days. I would end up like taking pharmaceuticals to um just like taking pharmaceuticals to like sleep it off. I remember taking like unprescribed anti-anxiety medication to like come down from it all. Like my hangovers were so bad. Like
Mm.
I could not function as a hungover person,
Yeah.
which is weird that I kept drinking because they were so bad.
Well, yeah, I mean, that might be the $1 million question, I mean, about how everything, why, when we start to experience some consequences, right? Whether it be the hangover or other stuff too, right? People experience all kinds of consequences. And yeah, I mean, I think that's what sets us apart from somebody who can potentially normally have a drink, right?
Yeah.
With when consequences enter the picture, we continue on. Maybe we adjust. We try to maybe adjust, right? I don't know if this is irrelevant to you, but we try to maybe. I look at it like a bowling lane, the bumpers. Maybe
Yeah.
we try to put some bumpers on our life. Okay, of course I'm taking off Monday and Tuesday night. Maybe on this day I'll maybe stay away from shots or whatever it is to try to lessen the blow. But I think the common story is that we usually, in one way or another, maybe lose control over that and end up back to where we were, or maybe worse. And it doesn't work out.
No, I mean, there was so many like consequences. Like I got a DUI leaving a bar when I was 19.
When you were 19, well,
And so you would think that that consequence at 19 would be, oh, you got a DUI at 19. You should probably take a look at your drinking because you made that decision to drive.
yeah,
And it was the dumbest situation because it would have been a $10 taxi for me to go home. And
mm,
I got in my car and argued with the police officer, got it taken away, lost my license.
yeah,
Um, and I drank through all of that. I was like, oh, well, don't have to drive now.
yeah,
So, and that consequence, I didn't learn my lesson. I was still having way too much fun. Um, and it wasn't until COVID where I actually really started to realize that I had a problem
yeah,
and and needed to stop.
yeah. And even with the at 19 getting the DUI, it's so interesting too because I've heard some of it in your story here too, right? Other people they're further down the line with things and I'm not there yet. So I'm still good, but I'm still showing up to work. I'm not causing chaos when I drink. Like, I feel like all of these are kind of excuses we tell ourselves, right? As long as I'm not like it is in the Hollywood movies and I'm not blowing up everything, I'm doing all right. And then a lot of people too are like, I've never hit a rock bottom, but I hear so many times on the podcast too, like some people might consider a DUI rock bottom, or there's other things as well. But I'm like, it doesn't guarantee because you have a consequence that you're going to turn your life around. I mean, we
Yeah.
can be very good at convincing ourselves that it was just an unlucky thing or whatever it is, right? Like it takes a little bit more, maybe looking within. So you mentioned during COVID there too, like you're starting to pick up on things being a problem. What were the indicators for that?
Well, the amount of excessive it got at that point,
Yeah.
and so it was. So our regulations were really weird at that time. They were adding things and then taking them away kind of like on a weekly basis.
Okay.
So for the alcoholic that needs to be social, being in lockdown was really difficult.
Mm.
So I ended up moving in with my mom, and she and I decided to lock down together. And I decided to make it a fun thing where we were going to try making different cocktails every day. So I just like, but the funny thing is what my mom doesn't realize is when she went to bed, I was sneaking drinks down into my room and drinking by myself. And that was one of the first times I started really drinking alone.
Mm.
And that was kind of like, it was the social butterfly that always wanted to be around people. And then COVID turned it into, I'm just wanting to drink.
Mm.
And, and then when we were allowed to leave our houses again, I ended up like going on like a 3-day drug bender with some friends of mine.
Yeah.
And I ended up doing drugs that I said I would never do. And like it just waking up the next morning with that shame of like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. Or like I was at a party and the police showed up because there was too many people there. Like just crazy situations where, I was also putting like myself at risk as well, because I'm actually immunocompromised. I was diagnosed with rheumatoid about 10 years ago, which is probably another reason why I was drinking and using drugs, because it helped with the chronic pain. But like as a result of that, I was putting myself at risk in a lot of situations during COVID, because I just wanted to be out. And once I was started doing like cocaine mixed with ketamine and mushrooms, all as like a fun little party cocktail, I was putting myself in situations I never thought I would be in. And that's when it started to get scary for me, but it was still somehow in my head, I still thought it was fun.
Yeah. Yeah. It can snowball in that direction really quick too. So you making this shift, right? And I hear about this all the time and I can relate to it 100%. You're making this shift. I mean, there's other factors at play here in your story, but a lot of people share this story of the going out, the connecting, the partying, the fun, and then shifting into like this way of isolation too, of drinking too. And I mean, COVID too, I think just with all the restrictions and stuff, in one way or another, maybe accelerated things for people. I mean, obviously, I haven't talked to everybody in the world about this, but a lot of people on the show, this accelerated things and really put it on a map that like, hey, I've got a problem, for a lot of people really fast. Because I think when we're out there partying and whatever, you're not really thinking about all of the other stuff going on. You're in the moment, you're enjoying it. And then it's like, okay, you're so numb to it. And it's a great distraction having people around. We don't have to look in the mirror and say, okay, what's going on with me? Now, when you're on your own, it's like, okay, this looks a lot different, feels a lot different. And maybe the whole quote unquote fun I was looking for, that's all gone, but I'm still plugging into this behavior. And then maybe the sneakiness kind of comes into play, or, the dishonesty, through omission maybe. And that can really weigh on us, right? I think it increases the shame level, maybe feel guilt about it. How long did that go on for?
It actually went on for a couple of years. So, it wasn't until so I was in this group of people and we were all working at the same bar. And we were partying together every day after work and during and whatever. And it was totally fine, but it was excessive. Like the drugs at that time were excessive. Like
Mm.
I was doing coke all through my shift at work. I was like drinking during and after work. Um, it was like pretty much anything I could get my hands on. There's this one night that I remember like so distinctly. It was actually like day 3 of a bender where I
Mm.
dragged my friend downtown with me. And I actually like my blackouts were just constant at that point because
Yeah.
I still to this day have been trying to go back to like how I got to where I ended up that night.
Mm.
Um, and I can't remember a thing. I still can't. And that
Yeah.
was like one of the scariest blackouts because I blacked out at like 5 p.m. There's like 12 hours of
Wow.
blackout there. And it was around that time that one of my friends in that group left and went to rehab. And that was like heartbreak for me, which was weird that she was like going to rehab. And I was so upset about it that she was gone. And I think it's because she was like my closest drinking buddy at that time
Yeah.
because she was always down for it. And so was I. Like she would text me or I would text her. Either way, she and I were both ready to go. She worked at the bar across the street from the one that I was working at. We would sneakily leave each other's restaurants and take shots at each other's bars and then go back to work. And she left me and went to rehab. And I was so heartbroken.
Mm.
And she came back from rehab like 60 days later. Maybe it was 90. I think she did a 90-day program.
Okay.
So 90 days later, she comes home. And I had a loser boyfriend at the time that was drinking and using just as much as I was.
Mm.
And she came home and told me about her experience. And I was like, oh, yeah, cool. And so I went home and I told my boyfriend, I was like, okay, we're only drinking on weekends, no more weekdays. Like we got to stick it till Friday.
Yeah.
And I would be good until Wednesday, but I'd come home from work on Wednesday and he'd be drinking. And I'd be like mad that he didn't think to pick me a bottle up on the way home, because obviously if you're drinking, I'm going to want to as well.
Yeah.
I actually eventually, after 2 weeks of that, I kicked him out. And as I was waiting for him to pack up his stuff, I went to my friend's house, the one that came home from rehab. And I was sitting on her couch and I was flipping through just one of her AA books that was sitting on the counter.
Mm.
And I started crying, like literally bawling my eyes out, because for some reason, the story that I read in that book, like strung so deeply to me about like wanting to be wanted.
Mm.
Sorry.
That's okay. Take a minute. That's good.
It's hard to talk about because I like go back there.
It brings you right back to the emotions you were probably feeling.
Yeah. And that was like, wow, I read this in an AA book, something that I like. My joke was like, I would never quit drinking because my mom didn't raise a quitter.
Mm.
And to read that, I can't even remember the passage. I just remember the feeling.
Mm.
And I went to an AA meeting the next day with her. I sat in the back of the room and someone shared a story. That was my story, that they grew up in this big house full of people, and then the people moved out and the parents worked full time, and then they found a way to be around people with alcohol and drugs and parties, and then the party ended, and then she found love in herself in sobriety. And that was like, I just started crying again. I was like, oh my goodness, like you just told my story. And so that was the first day I stopped drinking. And after that meeting, and I got 4 months of sobriety under my belt.
Wow.
I collected my 4-month chip, and then I planned my relapse party. I had I had decided that I got it figured out. I just needed a 4-month break, and
Mm,
that was it. And I invited friends to join me. I picked up my favorite drug of choice, which was Coke at the time,
yeah.
and a 12 pack of my favorite drink. Went to my friend's house and we drank and partied all night. And I got fired from my job about 2 weeks later because I got right back into drinking and using again. I didn't just need a 4-month break, it turns out, because I
Yeah.
didn't have anything figured out.
Yeah.
And then yeah, it was
Well, yeah.
another 4 months of drinking until,
Yeah.
yeah,
Before we
yeah,
go there to the next part,
yeah.
um, yeah, thank you for sharing all of that too. Interesting how it kind of played out. I mean, you're in the spot, you open the a book with a lot of pages, and maybe land on that, and have that story that you relate to so well to maybe spark that interest in trying something different. Um, so would it be fair to say, like towards the end here, because a lot of it's like, hey, fun, going out, partying, all that stuff. Would it be fair to say that the fun part of it um, was gone?
Oh, yeah. Like,
Yeah.
I lost the fun of it probably before COVID
Yeah.
because I had created this entire personality type for myself that it would be more strange for me to not drink than it would be for me. Or no, yeah, it would be stranger for me to not drink than it would for me to drink. Like if I wasn't drinking, something was wrong.
Yeah.
It was 100% a part of me. It was an extra appendage. Alcohol and Hillary were always together. It was known by everyone.
Yeah.
It My best friend to this day, who's known me in sobriety and alcoholism, she and I joke about how I was always the best person to have at a party because you always knew I had drugs. Like that was,
Yeah.
I created that. I was the girl with I knew where the party was. I had drugs on me. I had alcohol. Like I created it.
Yeah. It sounds like it anyway. It was a massive part of your identity. Without it, you could face the question of, who am I?
Totally.
And you wouldn't maybe know the answer right away.
No, I wouldn't. At that time, if
Yeah.
you asked me who I was without the party, the drugs, and the alcohol, I would not know who I was as a person.
Yeah. How old were you too, like during the COVID
I was
stuff?
in
And
I was in my 20s.
yeah.
So I turned third I was born in 93. So yeah, I would have been in my
Okay.
mid 20s around that time. Yeah.
Yeah. So you go, so interesting too. So you start going, you went to this meeting here related with your story too. And then you get 4 months, right? You're plugging in, checking it out. And then you sort of have these other thoughts, right? I mean,
Yeah.
common thoughts, right? Of course, like I've had a break from it. I'll be able to figure it out. I know, I know what to do this time. I know what not to do. And of course, I have all the information now, so I can, give things a try. So you plan, you have this party and get back into it. Do you have any thoughts like the next day or maybe a week later to, maybe I'm headed in maybe this is kind of a
You
route,
know,
choice,
that night, under the influence, I locked myself in the bathroom and texted my sponsor because I actually got a sponsor in those first 4 months, who's still my
Oh,
sponsor to this day, actually.
oh wow.
And yeah, I drunk texted her saying, I drank and did drugs tonight. I'm sorry. And she
Mm,
texted me back and I ghosted her. And I ghosted her for like 3 months. I feel bad now. I'm sorry. But yeah, so the next day, I didn't feel bad at all because I planned it. It was like I knew I was going to have that hangover. It wasn't until like the next couple of days of drinking
yeah.
where I had slept through my alarm and slept through work because I drank that night. I said I was going to stop drinking at a certain time and I didn't. I said I wasn't going to use drugs that night and I did. And
Mm,
as a result, that horrible hangover came to fruition. I slept through work and that moment when I woke up and realized that, I was like, shit, old
mm,
Hillary is back. You
mm,
don't have this shit figured out.
yeah.
Um, but at that point, I was like, at that point, I was like, nah, not ready to get sober. I have a trip to Mexico planned. I'll get
Oh.
sober
Mm.
whenever. Like it was something that I was just kind of pushing back. Like I'll get
Yeah.
sober again, just not yet. Like I've got some drinking to do.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's it. That, I mean, that's so common too, right? We have that stuff come up. I notice some people too, like when I notice people that take it really serious, they start today. You know what I mean? Like and maybe that's how it was. It's like, there's always going to be something, a birthday, New Year's, a wedding, an event, a this, a that, a sporting event, whatever it is. There's always going to be something. But it's like, yeah, things are just going downhill. You know, it's interesting too, because a lot of people share when they do drink again, if they've had some time of not drinking, they have a lot of the same thoughts you do, right? I'll be able to figure it out. Everything will be good. But it always ends up at the same place or worse, like
Mhm.
fast. Like
Yeah.
sometimes I think like, it's going to take maybe a year. I've got some time here, but it's like, no, when people seems like whenever people get going again, it's like they share so often that they're just like, wow, I was right back in the game right away. So after these 4 months, I mean, before your 30th birthday, share that story with us.
Yeah. So I relapsed in October and I got sober again in January. So, like, it was hard and fast. Like, I went as soon as I got fired from that job, it was like, let's go. Went down to Mexico. I already had 30 days planned to be down there. And I went absolutely insane down there. When I first booked that trip, I was sober and I was planning on having a very relaxing trip because I had
Yeah.
like an Airbnb. I wasn't doing the resort thing. And then going there back in my alcoholism was a completely different trip. I
Yeah.
was blacking out in Mexico, which is not something that you want to be
Mm.
doing in foreign countries, like at any time. And especially as a young woman, like anywhere is not a good idea. And I got robbed one night, blacked out, don't even know how I got back to my Airbnb. I
Wow.
lost so much money. I literally couldn't afford to eat while in Mexico. So I had to
Wow.
like go to the grocery store and I bought canned tuna because it was the cheapest thing and loaves of bread because it was the cheapest thing. I wanted
Wow.
to book a flight home sooner, but I didn't even have the money to do that. So,
Wow.
like, I was in this horrible place. I ended up making friends with a really nice Mexican drug dealer who eventually got his finger chopped off and like asked for money. This is such a weird story, but it's kind
Wow.
of
Did you
like
go
my
by
mom.
yourself? Were you there by yourself?
No, I went with a boyfriend at the time, but
Okay.
he was drinking and using just as much as I was. And
Yeah.
he always said that I brought so much chaos into his life. And I'm like, you had fun. But anyway, I kind of took him down with me in that scenario. But I was like, want to come to Mexico? And he's like, yeah, sure. Little did
Yeah.
he know I was about to take him on this like drug infested adventure. And
Wow.
yeah, so I woke up one morning, the after the morning of getting robbed, all of my money taken off of me and not remembering how I got home. I woke up that morning and I said to myself and to him, I am never drinking again. Like
Mm.
that is it. I'm done. And I had 2 days left of my trip and I stayed sober for those 2 days before I went home because I was just packing, trying to keep my head down.
Yeah.
Texted my sponsor as soon as I got home and I just tunnel vision. I got rid of every distraction. I had to commit 100% to my sobriety because I experienced firsthand how easy it was to fall off of it. Like
Yeah.
I convinced myself that I had it figured out. So I needed to convince myself that I'm an alcoholic. I do not drink like a normal person. My
Mm.
relationship with drugs and alcohol is completely different and I need to stop.
Mm.
And it was that realization that kind of kept me on that trajectory where I was like, I'm doing some deep work. I need to get into therapy. I needed to have a sponsor, someone to keep me accountable. I
Yeah.
need to let go of resentments that were just like suffocating me. letting go of like shit in my childhood and my parents' divorce and my mom not being around enough, and like let go of that stuff. Like that's my past. That's not who I am. That's just
Yeah.
part of my story. But then learning to how to love myself, like I did not learn that. I like from 16, I went straight into drinking. I was hanging out with the wrong people and I never got parented. Like I had to learn how to cook proper meals again and wake up at a
Yeah.
normal time. Like I had to relearn life. I felt like a brand new baby because it wasn't just getting sober for me anymore, is that I was done with that entire life.
Yeah.
And I think that was like that moment for me where I was like, nope, I am an alcoholic and I cannot drink ever, period.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Can't drink without experiencing the consequences. Those days were long gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. So your last couple of days in Mexico there too, sober, and then, go home and, plug right in. And I think it's so interesting how it happens. I mean, everybody's got their own sort of story, but I think in mine anyway, people are like, what was it? Or how'd you do it? And I'm like, literally, I went to rehab for a year. I went to jail. I went to rehab again. I went to this, I did that. I think it was every little bit. I think it was one piece of the puzzle. And then sort of the day when I quit, I think the pieces of the puzzle just kind of came together. I was picking up pieces as I went. I don't know if there was just one thing. I think everything kind of taught me a little bit. And I think it all just led me to what you just shared. I won't
Yeah.
ever be able to do this without consequence. I won't ever be able to do this without chaos, because I know people in my life who they can drink and it's not welcoming, chaos into their life. And I look at my life too, at any time something bad happened or I was involved in a bad situation or a relationship or whatever, just terrible things. I was always drinking every
Mhm.
time. And when I wasn't drinking, if that was the thing anymore, things were okay. But I never
Mhm.
felt happy. I never felt content. I never felt joy, because alcohol kind of became the gatekeeper to enjoying anything in my life. And then I was like, oh my gosh, if I don't drink anymore, what's my life going to look like? So you
Yeah.
plug into this. I mean, what got you to that point? I mean, hearing your story, we have a decent understanding of it too, but maybe surrender, right? What gets you to the point to where you're saying, you know what, my best efforts got me here, and this is not a good spot. Maybe I need to take some suggestions and follow through with a few things.
I think a lot of it I do have to like equate to AA, because in my first 4 months of sobriety, I was listening to a lot of other people's stories and what they did. And I remember hearing relapse a part of a lot of people's stories. And I talked to my sponsor about it and I was like,
Mm.
relapse isn't going to be a part of my story, is it? But then eventually it was. So now when I'm sharing, it's almost like I'm seeing someone that I heard when I was in early sobriety. And for me, I think it was like that moment of realization was just when I was so unhappy with it. Like
Yeah.
it was, I was waking up and wishing that I hadn't drank because I said that I wouldn't,
Mm.
or waking up and realizing that like I was only supposed to have 2 drinks, and there was times where I was said, okay, I'll come, but just for 1 drink. And it
Yeah.
was never that. So there was all of these like little kind of snowballs that, and hearing other people's stories that I related to,
Mm.
that kind of gave me that aha moment that I cannot drink like a normal person. Like that is just, I just can't, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And it was kind of sad because, there's some people in my life that do still drink, because there are people in the world that still do drink. So
Yeah.
I had to grieve a bit of that like I'm not like them, because like my sister can have 2 margaritas and that's it. She can get pregnant and go 9 months without drinking. And I remember when she first told me that she was pregnant, I'm like, ooh, you got to go 9 months without drinking. Like, that's
Yeah.
crazy. Here I am. It's been over 3 years since I've had a drink. And like other people think that's crazy. So I
Yeah.
think for me, like that big aha moment was breadcrumbs throughout the way.
Mm.
And then just the sadness that came from that. Like when my hangovers were really bad, it was depression and anxiety that I was going through more so than like nausea and headaches. It was
Yeah.
like emotional turmoil. Like I would have, I had suicidal thoughts during certain hangovers just because I felt so depressed.
Yeah.
And that didn't feel like me because I was always that fun party girl. So to like
Mhm.
have those really sad moments by myself that
Mhm.
people didn't see, that was kind of like, yeah, I'm not having fun anymore. It needs to stop.
Yeah. And that's sort of that, reflection too. You brought up the other part there too, like the sobriety. It sounds like anyway, the sobriety is one element, right? And then there's like life after, how do I live life on life's terms? One of my earliest mentors always said that, Brad, we got to get you beyond the sobriety. We got to get you on life's terms because you're still living in the bit of a fantasy land here in some ways.
Hmm.
Learning how to do some of those other things that when you kind of get into it heavy, I think at a young age, we don't learn that stuff. My bank account was always an overdraft if I had one, and getting another one, and late payments and terrible credit, eh, all kinds of stuff. Like when I got sober, it was like, okay, I've got to figure out how to do
Yeah.
some of these things. A lot of my peers, they had no problem with it. You mentioned something there too about not being able to drink anymore and like unfortunate. And I wonder if your perspective has changed on that. I think from my life, it was like that for me. Like, oh man, everybody else can kick back and enjoy. Now I got to say in my life today, I'm like, man, it's kind of like grateful things played out maybe the way they did in some aspects, because I feel like I have a lot more gratitude on this side of things and maybe see the world a little bit differently because of how dark maybe it was. Anything for you there?
Oh, my perspective on that has completely changed because
Yeah.
now it's like, I can't believe I ever drank. Like,
Yeah.
life now is so much more fun than the fun I thought I was having because I can do some of the same things that I found joy in, but thought I needed drinking to have that joy. I have with full joy. Like I feel that joy with every ounce of my soul because it's not numbed. So, like, when you're drinking in celebration, like at a wedding, for example, I now
Mm.
go to a wedding sober and I feel that happiness full and authentically versus the masked happiness or like the euphoria that alcohol would give within that happiness. Like that was so fake. And my relationships are so much more authentic now. They're full of so much love and understanding.
Mm.
Because I learned a lot of that self love as well and was able to fill my cup first. So now I can fill other people's.
Yeah.
And yeah, the what I thought was fun and the joy I thought I had and the mourning of not being able to drink normally has completely left because I can't imagine drinking now. Like that
Yeah.
compulsion and that desire has completely left my body. And it was around like 10 or 11 months where I first had that realization that like I just don't want to anymore. And that was an awesome feeling because I'm like, I just love my life now. And the joy that I feel is real. It's not fake or numbed in any way.
Yeah. And when that switch happens, it is incredible because a lot of us go into it. We hear people talk about it, but it's kind of one of those things. Yeah, that's everybody else's story, but it'll never be mine. We feel like we're going to miss it forever. Like I'm going to miss this
No.
forever, but that change does happen to where it's like, man, so incredible on this side of things.
Yeah. And it's funny that I was the person that was always drinking, and that was my personality, and everyone knew Hillary for drinking. Now everyone knows Hillary for being sober and like being really
Yeah.
awesome and having lots of energy and being reliable. And it's interesting that I've completely changed the script to being known as that person now. So, like, it's when I get invited to an event, someone will always make sure they have a non alcoholic for me. Like,
Yeah.
other than water because they like I'm planning my best friend's wedding that's coming up right now. I'm the maid of honor and we have a mocktail list which she would have never thought about doing, but because her maid of honor is sober, that's something that's going to be there now. So it's really it's a beautiful feeling also being able to change that perspective that other people had on me because of the work that I've done and the things that I have in my life now as a result of it, and the person that I am now too.
Yeah. What were the reactions from like family members and stuff?
My mom goes into tears when she talks about how proud she is of me, because she knew that I've always kind of really struggled internally with like who I am and finding those joys. And yeah, even on my last birthday, she wrote me like a really beautiful letter that like the woman that I've become and like my true authentic self finally coming to fruition is something that's been like really beautiful to watch. That's not to say that it like wasn't easy by any means. I had to make that decision and work for it in the form of like therapy and sticking to my sobriety and taking it just one day at a time. Cause like I knew myself well enough to know that I could convince myself that I could drink again, but just for today, I won't. And I was able to do that until I finally lost that compulsion. And now it's so weird to even think about drinking. Like if I had a drink in my hand, I would feel so weird. Like unless it's a coffee, get it away from me. Drinking is just weird to think about.
Yeah. Wow. Well, great job with everything. And I really appreciate you jumping on here and joining us and sharing your story with us.
Thank you.
Is there anything before we wrap up that you would like to share with people?
I think people should know that anyone can have sobriety and anyone can change their life. You don't need to hit a rock bottom. Like I know so many people can say, oh, I wish I never, let it get as bad as it did, because, there is no bad is so subjective to the person. Like, being homeless could be bottom for one person, but getting fired from a job could be bottom for another. So like, it's just, if you make that decision, stick to it, because it is just one day at a time, because eventually you can string all those days together and the compulsion it just leaves you. If you can get enough days together, your habits are rewired entirely.
Yeah, things change. Yeah. And it's so interesting you bring that up too. I've just never heard the story where somebody kind of is having a problem in their own terms, and then they turn it around and things are like back to maybe like a quote unquote normie. We'll just use that word. Just to normal. I think if you start experiencing consequences, I don't know. I think that's good. I think that's going to continue, and you can kind of get off the ride at any time, get off the train, right? One other person we had on the podcast, Hillary Phelps, she says you can get off the elevator at any time. You don't have to go to the bottom floor, And I think that that's just such a beautiful thing that, you can make that choice and stick with it, and things do get better. It feels overwhelming. It can feel really difficult in the beginning, but lean in, talk to other people, get some help, and things change.
Yeah. And your mornings are they're so beautiful when you're sober. I love my mornings. I'm such a morning person.
I know. It's like it flips the complete opposite of how it used to be.
Yeah. Watching the sunrise used to be for many different reasons, but now I like wake up to watch the sunrise so I can hear the birds chirping and sip my coffee.
Yeah.
It's so different, but I love it.
Yeah, it is. I know. That was the worst. Those were the worst times, the sun rising, being up for it anyway, being up all night. That's when, for me anyway, the sadness and everything, like, oh my goodness, that's really when I understood I was living a different life than most people as they get ready for work. And I'm just trying to maybe go to sleep for the night. But thanks again, Hillary.
Yeah,
and
thank you.
Really appreciate you sharing with us.
Thank you.
Well, there it is. Another incredible episode here on the podcast. Huge shout out to Hillary for jumping on and sharing her story. As always, I'll drop her contact information for Instagram down in the show notes below. I hope you're able to take a few things away from this episode. A lot of great stuff there about how things can completely change. I hear this all the time. People that are sober, you could have told them 2 days before, or maybe a week before, or a year before. They ended up making that decision and heading in the right direction that they never thought it was possible for them. It's all about just putting one foot in front of the other day after day, making the changes, being aware of where we're hanging out, who we're hanging out with. Are all of these things good for us for this new path that we're headed down? I hope that the podcast is helping you on your journey, helping you get started, keeping you curious, and helping you stay with your goal, which I think if you're listening is sobriety, because so many times we just hear, if you go back, it's the same story. It's the same story and often worse. So getting ahead of this thing, the earlier the better, but it's never too late. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you on the next one.